himself. He becomes master of his environment, the captain of his own ship, the director of his own destiny, the accomplisher of his own ends.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So we gonna run it back. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen and carry on tradition. How you doing, my brother? You out there? You're in an undisclosed location somewhere in the world.
I'm in Philadelphia.
Oh, Philly. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
This
it's like
this weekend is
brotherly
Philadelphia.
love and sisterly affection, they say. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, we're out here. There's a Muslim brother that I know who does education work. He runs this organization focused on getting more Black males in schools as
Yeah.
teachers. And
Yeah.
so some folks in the community might even know him. His family is El Mekki, Elmekki. His name is Sharif El Mekki. And he was raised out here in Philly, but then also his family was in Iran for a while. So he was raised between two different places.
Okay.
He had members of his family that were in the Black Panther Party. And so he was between Philly, Iran, but he's been out here most of his life, and he's running this organization here. And they have a convening, so a conference, Black Men in Education convening. That's been going on for the past 2 days. I think today's its third and final day. So I came out to support, be here. There's some other folks from the Bay Area who came out, and Charles, it's been really, really powerful, really great.
Well, I'm gonna send you a number for the Imam at Masjid Allah in Philadelphia.
Please do.
He's like you, and he's the fruit from the original tree. So, but y'all need to be connected. And you need to let him know how much you rock with me too. So it's like so he won't get it twisted. You know what I'm saying? It's not just hey, hello, how you doing? No, I'm a real one from the Bay with Imam Fahim Shuaibe. Okay, you got to come like that. That's an order. That's an instruction. You understand what I'm saying?
Received.
All right, I'm gonna get out the way. Let you do what you do. And everybody, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. To the community, to my brothers and sisters who are here. And alhamdulillah, it's been so great to be able to continue to do this with all of us, to learn from Imam Fahim, and then to share a little bit of the work that I've been doing with the book, Carry On Tradition, and then using some of the curriculum stuff that I use in community, in schools with students. And so today we're going deeper into the story of Amilcar Cabral. Such a powerful story. I love it. I love this history. This is history that I first started to learn about when I was a kid. So my mother and my father, I spoke a little bit about them, I think last time. My father, originally from Pennsylvania, where I'm at right now. He was raised up in Harrisburg, and he moves to California in the late 1960s. And that's where my mother and father meet. My mother, her family is originally from Mississippi. So Mississippi, Pennsylvania. My mother's family gets to the Sacramento area, North Highlands, in, I think, the late 50s. And so she's being raised up there. My father's family comes maybe 66, 67. And they end up going to the same high school. My father was a year ahead of my mother, and they first begin to date when my mother was a senior. So my father was year one, attending a junior college. And at that time, that's when he started to get involved with the Black Panther Party. And my mother, community worker in the party, free breakfast for children's program and other things like that she would participate in as a volunteer. But my father would be considered more of a rank and file member for a while. And then They moved from the Sacramento area to the Bay Area to Hayward. And that's where my older sister was born. And then they eventually moved to the South Bay, San Jose on the east side. And then that's where I was born. So when I was coming up, my father, he had all these old Black Panther Party papers, stuff that he was supposed to sell, which he did. And then, you know, stuff that he had purchased because when he was no longer in the party, he still kept ties with the party. So we had this big library of Panther papers. And then I would read them. I'd look at the illustrations. So Emory Douglas, who's a famous artist for the Black Panther Party, he's the one who actually came up with the way that they drew the panther for their logo. Sister Asali Dixon, who also is a very famous artist from the Black Panther Party. Like I'd get familiar with the work and then the pictures and then reading the articles. And as the Black Panther Party expanded in its focus from Black nationalism to internationalism to intercommunalism, you would see so much coverage of other things happening in the world. And the Black Panther Party, they became allies with and stood with Black people and other oppressed peoples because this was part of the mission of the Black Panther Party to fight for the freedom and the liberation of all oppressed peoples as their vision expanded, because that was how you address intercommunalism. We're all interrelated communities that are facing the same oppressive forces that don't care about your flag, what nation state you represent. They don't care about what you believe. Oh, you want to be Christian today? You want to be Muslim tomorrow? You want to be Jewish the day after that? You want to be a Zoroastrian after that? You want to be a Buddhist? You want to be agnostic? Okay, we'll make, because of our capitalism, we'll make stuff that caters to your specific interest, your political interest, your religious interest, whatever that might be, right? Just buy our product and allow us to continue to control the resources in your land, and we're happy. So the Black Panther Party worked with folks all over the world who were fighting for their freedom and liberation. Palestine, I would see Palestinians in the Black Panther Party paper, the North Vietnamese, the North Koreans, the Chinese, so many different folks from African countries. And that's how we get closer to the story of Amilcar Cabral for me. Aside from stuff from the Black Panther Party, my parents, they also had a lot of material that came from political organizations from the 60s and the 70s. So I'd be in there, and I remember they had this real old poster of like Angela Davis, when Angela Davis was still dealing with her trial. And there was this other poster that they had that was talking about voting rights. It had like some children. There was an illustration. They're sitting in a swing, and there's a caption. It's like a comic, and they're like speaking to an adult. Oh, well, why aren't you going to vote? And the children are saying it because they weren't old enough to vote. So it's like trying to get people to be inspired to pick up the ballot and then use the ballot in our communities. So there's all these different posters and other political cartoons and big pictures of Malcolm, big pictures of Muhammad Ali, and other figures like that. Then there was this one poster that always caught my attention because of the brutality that was captured in that poster. And this was one of the ways that I got introduced to Portuguese colonization. So it's a picture of a white man, like what we would describe a white man in North America. But of course, he's Western European, he's Portuguese. So it's a picture of a white man, and he's holding the severed head of a Black man. And as he's holding the severed head, he has this long knife, like a machete, in his mouth. So imagine, he's biting down on this machete. He's holding a severed head of a Black man. And he's kind of like a little smile on his face. And they're like some of his folks with him. And the context of the poster is talking about Portuguese colonization in West Africa for oil. And like in some of the text on the poster, it's talking about get the Portuguese out of Africa. That image, like to this day, I don't even remember the last time my eyes were actually on that poster. I see it all. And it's introducing these specific concepts to me. Okay, so there's these people who came from a whole other part of the world and felt that they had the right to take over land that belonged to our people. So that's one thing. And then the way that they took over that land was so violent and aggressive and merciless that they forcibly enslaved people, they wiped out people, they murdered people, children, families. Third, they did it with such arrogance that they think that it's okay to parade the severed head of a human being, smiling, joking about it, as if it's nothing. And as I'm saying that, right, because I'm in Philadelphia right now, like I'm right around the downtown area, and the history of this city and the colony that eventually becomes the United States. There's so many laws that come to mind for me from colonial times. And then of course, like state laws and federal laws that we can talk to, the colonial laws that focused on if you harm a Black person, whether that person is forcibly enslaved or free, if you take the life of a Black person, whether forcibly enslaved or free, how it will be treated as if nothing happened. So the reality that we're speaking about is not a reality that was only located on the African continent due to Portuguese imperialism and colonization. No, it's a reality that has spread throughout all of these colonies because of these people and the culture and the mind and the spirit of these people. I think I may have said it months and months ago. I remember when they were talking about Spanish colonization and hearing this, and it was one of the famous Spanish conquistadors, maybe like Hernando Cortez. And he talked about, we Spanish, we have a disease in our hearts that only gold and like glory can cure. So they have a disease. This is how he described it, a disease in the heart that only gold, so this wealth and fame, glory, can cure. And when you put so much money over people, you lose yourself because you don't know who you are. You're worshiping the wrong Ilah, you're worshiping the wrong God. So anyway, that's a long introduction into what I'm going to share. But that's how I was introduced to the independence movements all throughout the African continent, especially the independence movements against Portuguese colonization and the figure of Amilcar Cabral. So it's an honor to be able to speak to his story a little bit more today. So let's start the share. Okay, I hope y'all are able to see what's on the screen. So this is the last part of the book. And we preceded this with Black Panther Party, before that, the Nation of Islam, and before that, Marcus Garvey. And then we had some other African independence movements, but Amilcar Cabral, who in Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau, the Portuguese called it Cabo Verde, he led the independence movement, the guerrilla rebellion, revolutionary movement, in order to kick out the Portuguese and kick them out from lands that they began to colonize back in the 1440s, in the 15th century. So we have our dear brother right here. But now what I'm going to do, I'm going to transition from here to the slides so we can get into some of that history. So let me go to the keynote. Boom. All right. We should be able to see it on the screen. Move this out the way. Here we are. So our brother Cabral, Amilcar Cabral. And the names are that way because of the Portuguese colonization and the utilization of Portuguese as a colonial tool. So our brothers and sisters, that language is not indigenous to them, just like the language that we're speaking is not indigenous to us from wherever our people come from on the African continent, so many of us are forced to speak these languages of colonization. And that's why a lot of the lessons, the learning that we get from Imam Fahim that came directly from Imam W, being able to read deeper into the language is so important, because for us, we've had to use these tools and these resources as weapons for freeing our minds, because they were used in order to try to control our minds and our bodies and our souls and our spirits. So the resistance is in hacking these languages. And so Amilcar Cabral, that name sounds like a man who straight from Portugal, even though he is from Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde. That's where his parents are from. All right, continuing. So 1924 to 1973. Some of the very famous wisdom that came from his life and his revolutionary struggle with his people. This is one of his more famous quotes. Tell no lies, expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures, claim no easy victories. I'll read it again. Tell no lies, expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures, claim no easy victories. So some of that, for real, like you can see the alignment with this global principles, moral and ethical principles, especially Islamic principles. We don't lie to the people. Those who are lying and are responsible for trying to exploit or take advantage, we're going to expose that. We don't need to mask anything that, if it's a difficulty, if it's a mistake that we made, if it's a failure that we made, we'll take the victory, but we're not going to gloat in any easy victories. Like, we're focused on the larger victory for our people, which is the freedom of our people. Extremely wise. Another one, very, very important in the revolutionary struggle, in the way that because it was a popular struggle, he was able to connect with the people and be a leader of the people. He was a leader of soldiers who were actually fighting, warriors who were fighting, but he was a leader of the people. Always bear in mind that the people are not fighting for ideas, for the things in anyone's head. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. Another extremely popular statement, and very real statement. We're dealing with people who did not want to fight, but we have to, because our present and our future and our prosperity, our children, our grandchildren, depends on us fighting to get rid of these people who have acted like devils in our land. So this story ends the book Carry On Tradition because it's the full circle moment. It's the second full circle moment. We talked about it last week. The first full circle moment is getting to the Black Panther Party, which is tied to all that history that came before, Nation of Islam, Garvey, because Huey talked about in the first instance when African peoples were forcibly stolen from their land, the spirit that would eventually lead to the Black Panther Party was born. So this historical reimagining of that first moment, the Portuguese who are responsible for it all, they are the ones who created this new epoch in the history of our people, as in human beings, for Western European countries to say, all right, we're going to go down there and we're just going to steal some people and we're going to forcibly enslave them. So the Portuguese in 1441, their ships pulled up. They brutally kidnapped 12 West Africans, take them back to Portugal to be forcibly enslaved. And then shortly after that, they begin colonizing land in West Africa. And some of the land that they begin to colonize belongs to Cape Verde, what they called Cabo Verde, and then Guinea-Bissau. So this story of colonization that Cabral and his people are bringing an end to in the 20th century begins shortly after this moment. The response to what the Portuguese did, because our people never accepted it. And this foretells what Cabral and his people bring. We're not gonna allow y'all to keep doing this to our folks. That's what this story clearly speaks to. So there was an immediate response to 1441. That response didn't stop, and it hasn't stopped. But in the story of Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau, this was the energy that our people kept all throughout this time until they were able to oust the Portuguese. So 1446, Portuguese begin colonizing Guinea-Bissau. So this is one of their colonial coat of arms that they used for that area. Portuguese began colonizing Cape Verde in 1446. So they called it Cabo Verde, Cape Verde. And if we're looking at the map here, in the middle of the map, you see Mar, then you see Del, and then for you, if you're looking at it to the left, you should see C Verde, in the full de C Verde. No, in the full set de C Verde. And you had West African peoples who, they would travel to Cape Verde, but you didn't have any group of people who were like, we're going to begin to build community there. They would go there from time to time, either fish off the land or just use the resources that were on the land and then go back to, their mainland, West Africa. But then in 1446, Portuguese ships show up there and they begin to build up Cabo Verde for themselves, or Cape Verde for themselves. And of course, they build it up with the enslavement of African people, forcibly enslaved African people. So Cape Verde became one of the first sites of Portuguese forced enslavement. So they would take brothers and sisters from the mainland, bring them over there, and then forcibly enslave them as they built out plantations on Cape Verde. And so this is the beginning of that imperialism, that colonization, those institutions of oppression, racism, forced enslavement that our people were constantly fighting back against. This starts in the 15th century. We're talking 500 years in the making. By the 500 years by the time we get to Cabral. And then they begin to acquire more and more land and more territory. So the Portuguese, they construct a fort at Elmina in 1482. This fort became a major hub for forcibly enslaved Africans. So the Elmina or Elmina slave castle is what they call it. This became a major player in what these Western sources like to call the transatlantic slave trade, what we refer to with the Kiswahili term of Ma'afa. I mean, so many brothers and sisters were brought to this place, were brutalized at this place, were put on boats and shipped to either Europe or the Western Hemisphere directly from this place. And again, the Portuguese started it all. The Spanish got involved in this because of the Portuguese. The Dutch got involved in this. The French got involved in this. The British got involved in this. Everybody was following the example of the Portuguese. This is their legacy. And nowadays, Portugal wants to run around acting as if they didn't really play that much of a role in this. And then here are two flags that the Portuguese were using in the 1500s in order to speak to their colonial empire. So the flag on the left, at the very bottom of it, so if you recognize it, you can see that there's North Africa and then there's West Africa. You can see the coast, the Gold Coast. You go all the way down to the bottom. They have Amina, A-M-I-N-A. That's the castle that we were just talking about, the fort of Elmina that they built. And then top left corner, you see them depicting Portugal up there. Because by this time, this map is probably early 1500s. The map to the right is 1560s, the 1560s. They just continue to try to colonize and imperialize as much of the African continent as possible. And by any means, according to them, which is the most diabolic and evil means possible. That's what they did in order to make money. Continuing. Then when we get to like stepping back from that direct history and just taking a look at the Portuguese as actors in this history of colonization and imperialism. At the height of their power, all this, especially the stuff that you see that, like this map is depicting this in kind of that lavender, light purple. That was all them. You can see on the map, let me see if no, I can't really point to it more directly, but you can see Cape Verde in between Africa, so like in the Atlantic Ocean and the Western Hemisphere. You can see Cape Verde, it's circled right there. You see Guinea, so Guinea-Bissau coming from that area. You see them getting ready to move into Angola, Mozambique, having an influence on South Africa, Madagascar. I mean, so much of the African continent they touched. And then there's all these other areas that they touched throughout the world. And they didn't bring good to these people, to these places. They didn't. They brought evil with them, evil intentions to make money. But this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the Portuguese Empire. And to support and sustain so much of that, they used Black bodies. There's them. And that's why you see Brazil, because Brazil was colonized by the Portuguese in South America and still affected by Portuguese culture to this day. All right. Now, moving forward in that history and keeping with the spirit of righteous resistance, rebellion in our people, the folks never accepted it. So they started to enslave Black people in Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau and all those other areas that they were touching in the 1400s, moving into the 1500s, into the 1600s, into the 1700s, into the 1800s. And all throughout that time, our people were fighting back. We make note of this one here because there was a major, major uprising of forcibly enslaved Africans in Cape Verde, Cabo Verde in 1853. And this brought the Portuguese closer to trying to reconcile their system of forced enslavement, if it was worth it or not. And by this time, of course, the Portuguese are losing some of their power globally because you have the UK emerging as a global factor or a global leader, the French global leader, and some of these other Western Europeans, but definitely those two vying for that top spot. The US isn't really playing that major role, a major role by this time because the United States is still trying to figure itself out and is on the verge of a civil war. So this uprising is an ominous moment for the Portuguese and their colonization of parts of West Africa. But it doesn't stop them, but it brings them closer to, in Cape Verde, saying we need to abolish the institution of slavery, which they do in 1878. And this is, I think, a very important reframing that some folks who might watch this video might need. I think the majority of us already get this, but especially the way that our history is told here in the United States. Abraham Lincoln, they want to put him up as the emancipator, right? The great emancipator because of the Emancipation Proclamation, which wasn't legal because he was trying to prescribe something on a nation that had formed itself. So what president has the ability to influence policy in another country? The Confederate States of America formed in 1861. They had their own constitution, they had their own president, Jefferson Davis. So how does Abraham Lincoln, a president of another country, have the power or the ability to decree something in another country run by a completely different governmental structure, leaders, another Supreme Court, all of that? But anyway, it was a clever measure, but it only was supposed to exist during the war, 1861 to 1863. 1861 to 1865. And it came into law January 1st, 1863. And for that, he's known as the Great Emancipator. But it didn't really have legal authority. But it was a great move because if you got people debating whether or not it's legal, they're thinking about that instead of thinking about fighting. You know, war in many ways is deception and distraction. So you have figures like that. You have these other white abolitionists that they love to post up in front of us. Like, oh, they did something for your people. They did something for your people. John Brown put his life on the line and the lives of his children on the line to fight aside Black people for the freedom and liberation of Black people because he was inspired by the fight of Black people. That's the story. These people always were moving based on what our people did in our tradition of righteous resistance and righteous rebellion. Why did the UK move to abolish their institution of forced enslavement? Because Black people kept rebelling and resisting and fighting back. And so it didn't make good economic sense to continue doing that. So we continued to force these people's hands, because if we didn't, they would have continued doing what they were doing. They had every single moral and ethical precept available to them, looking at their religion, whether they practiced Protestant Christianity or Catholic Christianity or whatever. They had all that stuff, and they used each one of those things to justify their actions to continue to forcibly enslave and imperialize and colonize displaced Native people to make money. So no, they're not. Their movements of abolition are even inspired by what Black people did. But of course, since we're not the ones who control the way that they tell the story, and if we're only learning from them, we're going to think, oh yeah, these people are really out here doing some stuff. No, they were responding to what Black people did. Because we never stopped fighting from 1441 to the present moment. So then oh yeah, it's the stylish thing for us to do now. It's the practical thing. It's the moral thing for us to do. And then they want to assume, it's so tiring. But yeah, they did this because Black people, African peoples, were resisting and making it difficult for them to maintain control in that way. So let's do away with this thing and see if we can concentrate our energies in another area so we can continue to maintain power and control. All right, so that's how we get there. Because of that, so that was 1878. In 1879, Guinea-Bissau became a separate colony from Cape Verde in the Portuguese Empire. So all of that, so what we describe now is Cape Verde, Cabo Verde, or what we're describing historically as Cabo Verde, it included Guinea-Bissau. It was just all under the same administrative colonial mandate. Once we get to this point of the abolition of slavery in 1878, in 1879, because we're still trying to forcibly enslave folks in Guinea-Bissau, it became a separate colony from Cape Verde. All of this, though, represents multiple centuries of Portuguese domination, imperialism, and colonization, brutality that our brothers and sisters were experiencing, and of course, fighting back against. So now we're getting closer to the history that gets us to the lifetime of Amilcar Cabral and the revolutionary movement that leads to the independence of our brothers and sisters there. So he was born in 1924, and he was assassinated in 1973. Born September 12th, 1924. And this is, I'm still trying to verify that this is a picture of him, but I believe that it is. I've done my own analysis, and because it's very difficult to find pictures of him when he's a kid. But I came across this one on a site that was, pretty trustworthy, and then did my own analysis of it. But this looks like a young Amilcar Cabral. 1945, he travels to Lisbon. So at this time, he's in his early 20s. He's 20, he's 21. And Lisbon, Portugal, because the Portuguese were still the colonial leader of the territory where he was born in and his parents were born in. He travels to Portugal to study. And there he's surrounded by other brothers and sisters from other parts of the African diaspora, especially the African diaspora that has also influenced the brutality of Portuguese colonization. And so many of those brothers and sisters are just focused on, we need to get these people out. And so he's there with like-minded brothers and sisters, and he's learning new ideals and theories and philosophies, and it's just building up this spirit of resistance in him even more. That was already bequeathed to him by his ancestors. 1945, he travels to Lisbon, Portugal to study. He graduates in 1950, and soon after his graduation, he returns back to his homeland. He's working in like some parts of the government. And one of the things that he does in those early years, 1951, 1952, he's conducting, and we talked about it a little bit last week, this this survey, this agricultural survey, which has him in all these different parts of Guinea-Bissau and interacting with the people, talking to the people. What's going on? What's happening with the land? What do you need? What do you want? And in those interactions, he realizes the potential power that is there in the people if the people can be organized on a mass level. So he sees it because he was in the field, in the community. I made a point last week talking about how the Black Panther Party operated with a similar example. 1966, October 15, 1966, Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, Huey specifically, spending time in the communities of West Oakland, North Oakland, talking to the families, talking to people, talking to the children. What's going on? What do y'all need? What do you want? And this is how they inform themselves. One of the things that comes out of that, of course, is a 10-point platform and program, and then the early work that the party does, because they were with the people. And something that the Black Panther Party would say as like part of their revolutionary and political strategy, the conditions always exist within the people because the power is always in the people. So the conditions always exist for us to take advantage of them for a revolutionary purpose. Some people right now in the US are still reeling from the election. Oh, it's going to be Trump. It's going to be Trump. Okay. As Imam Fahim talked about and other folks have talked about, that moment is a condition, or it leads to conditions in this country. And those conditions can lead us to say, oh yeah, enough is enough. It's time for us to really stand up and do something. If we can mobilize, if we can be committed, dedicated, we can accomplish what we've been trying to accomplish this entire time. So Cabral takes advantage of that moment in the 1950s when he returns, and he's seeing the people, connecting with the people are seeing him. And then because of the ideas that are coming out of that and the conversations that are coming out of that, there are some folks who are like, bro, you can't stay here. You need to leave. So he travels to Angola. And when he's in Angola, he joins another movement. I got you, man. I'm wrapping up right now. He joins another movement, the Movement for the Liberation of Angola, the MPLA, which gets him closer to this revolutionary step that is so amazing for the people of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Shortly after that, they form their organization, the PAIGC, the Partido Africano para Independencia de Guinea y Cabo Verde, the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde. 1956 is founded, and it was founded in Ghana. So they used the areas around them that were also involved in these independence movements, ousting their colonial lords. And then this right here, we talked about it last week. This is the moment that leads them to say, nonviolence is no longer a strategy that's viable for us to earn our freedom. So this was a major massacre of dock workers in 1959. And immediately after that, the PAIGC changes its position and they begin training. And they train in Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah gives them permission to have troops train military drills because they know in order to get the Portuguese out, it's going to require an arms struggle. And we got brothers in there, we got sisters in there because it was all hands on deck. The armed struggle is officially declared in 1963. Yeah, I should say war. I'll adjust that. But they declare war in 1963 on Portugal in both of those regions. Portuguese fight, send troops, they're there. But you can't stop the power of the people, especially the spirit of resistance that's been bubbling up for more than 500 plus years. So they fought. They fought. Allies. We have Castro here from Cuba. We have other political and revolutionary allies from other parts of Africa, other parts of the African diaspora. Of course, our brothers and sisters here in the States, we're standing with Cabral and the PAIGC. This is part of the legacy of this brother, leading this revolutionary independence movement from 63 to 73. He didn't see the end of it because he was assassinated January 20th, 1973 by somebody who betrayed the movement and was looking for favor with their previous colonial master. But you can kill a revolutionary, but you cannot kill the revolution. The spirit, the fight lived on in the people because the foundation had already been established. And in 1974, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, they raised up their flag because they ousted the Portuguese, defeated them completely. Get off our land. Because the spirit of righteous resistance and righteous rebellion is embedded in the DNA of our people now. We're going on the 6th century of this work. When we get to 2040, 2041, that's 6 centuries. That's more than half a millennium. Earlier this century, in the 2000s, this was at the 50th celebration of the independence of Guinea-Bissau. Because our people are going to fight until our people are free. That is the spirit of righteous resistance and righteous rebellion. And it's righteous because the way that land, peoples, freedom, rights were taken was unjust, was wrong. And so to stand up and to check that, to challenge that, and to reclaim your freedom when it was done in such a grotesque and unjust way, and you know your limits, it's going to be righteous. And it's such a powerful story. So this is where Carry On Tradition ends, because we use the book to talk about, I'll bring this up one more time. We use the book to talk about these very, very powerful examples throughout the history of our people. And we started in 1441, when you can say that's one of those beginning points. And we end that text in 1973, 1974. But we know the story hasn't ended. But to present some of those clear examples of the history of righteous resistance and righteous rebellion from our people, it's fitting to end it with one of those major wins. The people who started it, some of the people who experienced them first, they kicked them out. And Amilcar Cabral's role in that movement, he played such an essential role in that latter part of that fight for our people. So yeah, it's a beautiful story. And alhamdulillah, inshallah, I did a good job of honoring that tradition. And I appreciate Imam Fahim for giving me the opportunity to share some of that work from Carry On Tradition with you all here in this space. And thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share this work with you. Inshallah, it's been beneficial. And I'll finish it with this. May we carry on tradition for our people to be free. Let's get free.
Yeah, y'all come on, give your takbir. Takbir. Come on, I want to hear you. I want to hear you. Takbir.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar. Express your appreciation and your value for what you've heard and what it is. I want to hear your voices. Don't be silent. Unmute yourself. Say something. Show gratitude.
Certainly. Wow. Thank you.
Abdul Shakur, I got you. I'm waiting for all the rest of these other folks on
Allahu
there.
Akbar.
Come on now. Come on through, y'all. Come on. I see your number. I see your name. Come through.
Allahu Akbar.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum. Takbir.
Allahu
Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Alhamdulillah. Rabbil Alameen. It's beautiful. There should be a tear in the corner of your eye, some kind of way behind this, and we ain't even finished. We ain't even finished. The beat goes on, but
Let me see.
really, really, really powerful.
Assalamu alaikum, brother Fahim. This is Rashid.
All
Miss
right.
you, love you, miss you.
Alhamdulillah. All right. And likewise, inshallah, we'll have a chance to see each other soon, inshallah. So, alhamdulillah, Tyson, he's always on the road. And like I say, he's a real one from here in the Bay. And we look forward to more and more and more from him. He's on it. He's on it. So, alhamdulillah, thank you all. And we are going to move on with my portion today, and we're going to move on down the line with the entirety